you, Mr. Attorney. Good morning, Mr. Manager.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Are there items to be deferred? Continued?
Well, there are, but before you go on, I'd like to make a point of clarification, so that we can start this meeting in the right way. There was a chairman, a vice chairman, and I think an alternative that was named by the mayor to run meetings. By charter, the mayor only has the authority to name the chairman. The vice chairman or any other positions can be named by this body itself. Therefore, I am going to make a motion that this body here now names a vice chair or any additional positions that it so wishes.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, if I may, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you,
We're
Mr.
in the middle of the motion. You can speak.
No,
But
please.
I'm going to say, no, you're not a chair right now.
But I am.
That. You're not a chair. Just
we
because
have
someone named you a chair that does not have the authority under the charter does not make you a chair.
Commissioner, all due respect, I'm recognizing your motion. But I am conducting this meeting right now.
Well, you're really not conducting this meeting. The meeting can be conducted by whoever this body names vice chair or any other position it wishes. So
That's incorrect.
So
it's not incorrect.
Yes, it is.
Madam City Attorney.
just a moment. I'm recognizing your motion. Is there a second to your motion?
I will second.
Motion has been seconded by Commissioner Diaz de la Portilla, and now we'll open for discussion. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The charter is very clear that the mayor is the presiding officer of the commission, and the mayor may designate the presiding officer function of the commission. There is no such thing as chairman. There's no such thing as vice chairman. Those are words that we use colloquially. There is no chairman. There is no vice chairman. There's only one presiding officer. That's the mayor. And the mayor can designate that presiding officer at the mayor's discretion and will. There's no limitation on who the mayor can name as presiding officer. There's no limitation on when the mayor can himself become the presiding officer. And therefore, the mayor can name a presiding officer. In the absence of, as a commissioner, can delegate that. In the absence of that commissioner, the mayor can say, this is going to be the next presiding officer. In the absence of that commissioner, the mayor can say, this is going to be the next presiding officer. In the absence of the mayor, who can be the presiding officer at any given moment, because that's what the charter says. The fact that we call it chairman, vice chairman, those are more colloquial terms that we've used over time. But it's really the presiding officer, and that's very clear in the charter that the mayor and only the mayor is a presiding officer with the ability to designate who the presiding officer is. It's not about chairman or vice chairman or whether the commission can decide who the chairman or the vice chairman or vice chairman. Beyond that, there is no ability to name a fourth, let's say, presiding officer because there would be no quorum in the commission. So what my memo sets forth is if A happens, in other words, if there's a full commission, I designate X person as the presiding officer. If B happens, in other words, that person is not available, I will designate someone else as the presiding officer. And if that person's not there, I will designate someone else as the presiding officer. So that is what the charter says, and it's very clear, and that is uncontrovertible. It's not something that can be modified by the commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Carvalho, you recognized.
And I'll read it for you if you want.
I've read it. I've read it. You don't need to read it. Where we in agreement here is that you have not named, or should I say that the charter does not have vice chairman, does not have chairman.
Of course not.
And that you do not, per se, use the word presiding officer. You use the word chairman, you use the word vice chairman, and some other interpretation that you made. So, if I may, Madam City Attorney, we're in discussion. This can be a quick one to resolve, so that we can move over.
Mr. sorry, can you get closer to the mic? I'm sorry.
I also am under the flu today, but I am here. If I cough at some point in time, I hope you could all understand. But the question being is, does the commission get to name its vice chair or not?
As the mayor said, the powers in the charter just say that the mayor shall be the presiding officer of the city commission with the authority to designate another member of the city commission to serve as presiding officer. That's all it says. It doesn't mention anything about an additional presiding officer or those types of vice chairmanships and all that. According to Masons, the commission can name a vice chairmanship based on regular procedures with regard to governing bodies, but that would be up to the commission to decide what you would like to do.
I understand that, and that's what I'm trying to clarify. Now, going beyond that, my question is, the mayor named a presiding officer that is not here. I think it's clear that, by your statement, that we could name our own vice chair. We could even go back to the title, if we like, that we've had in the past of vice mayor ourselves, and have the authority to name someone to those titles. The question being now is more of a technical one. I'm presiding in itself. Can the mayor, after he names someone, the chair, now he's saying that what he actually did was name him the presiding officer. I remember a time being here that he argued with me that he was the chair. But that's then, we're here today. The direct question is, since he already named a chair, and that chair is not here, where does that put us? Can the commission name a vice chair or another similar position by another name, such as vice mayor, that can chair the meeting for us or not? With the chairman not being here.
Right. With the commission can definitely accept what the mayor has done, or which has been the custom and practice, or the commission can, amongst themselves, name a vice chair for the meeting. But I do think that it is clear in the code who the presiding officer is. Unfortunately, the mayor has traditionally done it for the year. So I don't know if we're going to start changing that process, but that has been the custom and practice of this commission, that it has been named for the year. The authority that the mayor definitely has is to name a presiding officer. I mean, that is unequivocal. The vice chairmanships can be done pursuant to Masons, and Mr. Clerk, you can jump in at any time, but the Masons does allow for the body to pick a vice chair.
Commissioner Reyes, you recognized.
Yes, I have a simple question. In the absence of the person that was chosen by the mayor to preside over this meeting, does the mayor has the authority to choose another person to preside the meeting? That's the only question that I have.
The charter.
Or is the commission the one that has the power to choose who it is? Just tell me. It is a very simple question.
Yes.
Does the mayor has the power, or do we have the power? That's it.
The mayor, pursuant to the charter, just picks the presiding officer. Doesn't say anything else.
Okay, he can change it in any commission meeting.
That is not how it has been done in the past.
That was not the question, Madam City Attorney.
No.
By the charter.
By the charter, the only thing it says is that he picks the presiding officer.
Okay.
There is nothing that precludes the commission from accepting the presiding officer as he has placed in the memo. They can accept the vice chairman as they have in the past. However, if the commission does not want to, the commission can decide to pick a vice chairman amongst themselves. They can, because that is allowed for.
That is in the case that we are going to pick somebody that is going to act as chair when the person that was picked by the mayor is not here, right?
Correct. There's nothing that precludes you from doing that. The
That
body
doesn't
can
preclude
do
that. But in this situation that we're now, when we're now, today, 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 something, okay, does the mayor has the right or the power to pick who is going to share this commission meeting?
The section in the code.
The commission is the one that has the power to do it. That's it. That's 100%.
He can do it, yes. However, the board can do it as well.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not in a space and time. Unfortunately, it is very, I mean, it doesn't say the mayor can do the presiding officer at each meeting. It doesn't say that the mayor picks, during, 50 times during the day. He's picked a presiding officer. The presiding officer is not here. The board can choose to accept the vice chair as we have in the past, named by the mayor, or the board can name its own mayor. At the end of the day, the chairmanship of the commission is bound by whatever the board allows that chairmanship to do.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Mayor, you recognize.
Yeah, and this is becoming a repeated problem, and this is going to resurface itself in the mayoral veto. We cannot just start reinventing laws here. It's not the way it works. The charter is very clear. Masons do not have any role to play in this matter. Masons is only usable, and clerk, correct me if I'm wrong, in the absence of some clear direction, in the absence of some clear rule. There is no lack of clarity here. The rule is very, very clear. The charter it's not even a rule, it's the charter. It's not an ordinance. It's our governing document that our residents voted on. And the charter only vests, in fact, the charter says that the mayor is a presiding officer. We can debate about whether you can call it presiding officer or chairman until we're blue in the face. Doesn't matter what you call it. The mayor is a presiding officer, and only the mayor has the right to designate the presiding officer. That is not something that Masons can change. It's not something that you default to Masons after, there's just no ambiguity. The mayor is the presiding officer, and the mayor can designate the presiding officer. When they designate one person, that person's not there, the mayor can designate the next presiding officer and the following presiding officer. Obviously, beyond that, there's no quorum, so there's no point in designating a further presiding officer. But it's an unequivocal responsibility of the mayor. There's no limit, irrespective of whether the mayor has typically done it for a year and a day, 15 days, 25 days. The chairman is the chairman of the commission, the presiding officer that I've designated. He has an election. So he's not going to be here for an entire year because he's going to have to resign at some point. So that's going to change. It changes, and it has changed historically. So within the year, for a variety of reasons. But there is no limitation on when the presiding officer or how the presiding officer can be designated. There's no case that does that, which would be the only thing that you could use to interpret the charter. It's not about Masons. This is not, Masons is rules of procedure. And in the absence of a law on something, you can default to a rule of procedure from Masons. But you can't do that when the charter explicitly outlines the powers. That is the contract with the citizens of the city of Miami. Mr. Clerk, I see you nodding your head in the affirmative.
Yes, sir. Clerk, you recognize.
Yes, sir, that is correct. Absent a rule or a custom, Masons is primarily a guide, and in this particular case, I believe you would follow what's in the charter or the code.
Right. Thank you.
So we have a motion, we have a second. I'm going to weigh in for my part, as the plaque in front of my name says Vice Chairman for the moment. We're going to find out where we go with this. From my interpretation, 4G1 of the Charter, powers and duties of the mayor. The mayor shall be the presiding officer of the city commission with the authority to designate another member of the city commission to serve as the presiding officer. So we're going to stick to that language. let's say the vernacular of chair, vice chair is separate from that. It then goes into the code, one step down, Section 2-34A, in accordance with the provision of the Section 4G1 of the Charter, the mayor shall be the presiding officer of the city commission unless the mayor designates another member of the city commission to serve as the presiding officer. My interpretation of that is that at any time, he can wake up or even come into the middle of the city commission and say, I would like to be the chair of this meeting. I will be the presiding officer of this meeting as I have that right. Or he can designate anyone. Even in this moment, he could designate me, Commissioner Carollo, any one of us as the presiding officer. Beyond that, Masons also has, even though it's written clearly, it follows practice. And we have a very established practice in history of naming a chair, vice chair. And the mayor's always done that. So this motion, my only concern on this motion is that it actually injects something into the charter level, which is not something this body has the authority to do. But it seems there may be some differences of interpretation.
Well, we need to dispense with the motion.
We do.
So let's have the sponsor of the motion respond to that. Okay.
I think that this can be looked upon in two ways. One is whether the mayor can name a vice chair that will be presiding this meeting. Now, what I suggest that we resolve this real quickly, if you like, is that you either do one or two things. You designate as chairman the presiding officer, Commissioner Russell, for this meeting, or you come and preside the meeting yourself, one or the other. I would be happy to withdraw my motion if you would do that until we further look into this. However, I think you need to start using the correct title under the charter, presiding officer. Now, even so, with that, that still gives us the right, as long as we don't name the title presiding officer, to name other titles up here within this council. And we're talking about two different things now. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you do not have the right to name a presiding officer. You need to start calling the presiding officer / chair, if you like, so it would be clear. But we have a right to call someone if we want to, or name someone and elect someone, vice chair, other titles, if we so wish up here. So, to try to cut through the chase, it's very simple. Just name Commissioner Russell, the presiding officer for this meeting. I will withdraw my motion. I'm sure the seconder would too. And we can move forward into the next part.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's very clear that the chair, that the charter is very specific, that there's only one person who can name a presiding officer as a commissioner, and that is the mayor. And if you felt that my memo was unclear, let me clarify it for you. My memo will name, and my tennis statement right here names Commissioner Keon Hardeman as the presiding officer. In Commissioner Keon Hardeman's absence, Commissioner Ken Russell will be the presiding officer. And in Commissioner Ken Russell's absence, Commissioner Alex Diaz de la Portilla will be the presiding officer of the commission. Does that clarify it for you?
Then the only thing you need to specify is that for today's meeting, Commissioner Russell will be the presiding officer.
I just did. just did.
All right. So let's move on. We have clarified that the mayor is designating me as the presiding officer for today.
That's correct.
Does the mover withdraw the motion?
I just stated that I would.
Thank you.
I'm naming the presiding officer until I change
Right.
the presiding officers. Thank you.
Okay. For today.
Don't get too comfortable.
Yeah. We need just magnets on these signs so we can swap them around. All right.
Thank you.
So